The day Maya discovered her sister had manipulated their father into removing her from the family construction business, she was standing in a hardware store, covered in sawdust, buying supplies with her own hard-earned money. What she didn't know was that in exactly 6 months, she'd be walking into that same business as its new owner, watching her sister's face crumble as the reality of her betrayal came full circle. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Chen had always believed that hard work spoke louder than words. Growing up in the shadow of her father's construction empire, Chen Brothers Building Company, she'd learned to swing a hammer before she could properly tie her shoes. While her younger sister Sofia spent afternoons practicing piano and attending dance classes, Maya was on job sites, learning the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead screwdriver, memorizing the names of every tool in her father's truck. The irony of the company name wasn't lost on her. Chen Brothers, founded by her grandfather in 1952, had never actually had any brothers in the family. Her father, David Chen, was an only child who inherited the business and kept the name for tradition's sake. Maya had always assumed she'd be the one to carry on that tradition, even if it meant she'd have to change the name to Chen's sister someday. That assumption shattered on a Tuesday morning in October when she arrived at the office to find the locks changed. Maya stood outside the familiar glass doors of the building she'd entered thousands of times, her key refusing to turn in the lock. The morning sun reflected off the company logo etched into the glass, the same logo she'd helped redesign 3 years ago when they'd modernized their branding. She tried the key again, thinking perhaps she'd grabbed the wrong one from her ring, but the metal wouldn't even slide into the mechanism. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jenny, the office manager who'd been with the company since Maya was in middle school. "Emergency meeting this morning. Your father wants everyone here by 9. It was already 8:30, and Maya was supposed to be inside preparing for a client presentation scheduled for 10. She walked around to the back entrance, the one that led directly into the warehouse where they stored equipment and materials. That lock had been changed too. Confusion turned to concern as she dialed her father's number, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried Sofia next, though her sister rarely answered calls before noon. "Maya?" Sofia's voice was thick with sleep. "Why are you calling so early?" "The locks are changed at the office. I can't get in, and Dad's not answering his phone. Do you know what's going on?" There was a pause that lasted too long. Maya heard rustling on the other end, the sound of Sofia sitting up in bed. "Oh, that. Dad said he was making some changes to security." "What kind of changes? I need to get in for the Morrison presentation." Another pause. Sofia cleared her throat. "Maya, I think Dad wants to talk to you about some company restructuring. He's been really stressed about finances lately." Maya's stomach dropped. She'd been managing the company's books for the past 2 years alongside her project management duties. The finances were tight, as they always were in construction, but they weren't anywhere near crisis levels. They'd actually had their best quarter in 5 years thanks to 3 major commercial contracts she'd secured. "What kind of restructuring?" she pressed. "I don't know all the details. Maybe you should come back later when he's ready to meet." The casual tone in Sofia's voice didn't match the gravity of what was happening. Maya had been locked out of her own family's business, the business she'd worked for since she was 16, the business she'd assumed would be hers someday. And her sister was acting like it was a minor scheduling conflict. "Sofia, I've been running this company with Dad for the past 5 years. I need to know what's happening." "I'm sure it's nothing major. That's just being cautious about some stuff. You know how he gets." Maya did know how their father got. David Chen was methodical, careful, and deliberate in his decisions. He didn't change locks on a whim or make major business decisions without extensive discussion. Something was very wrong. She drove to her father's house, the same house where she'd grown up, where family dinners still happened every Sunday. The driveway was empty, except for Sofia's red convertible, a car she'd bought with money from her trust fund, the same trust fund Maya had convinced their father to establish for both of them when the business was doing particularly well. David answered the door looking older than his 62 years. His gray hair was disheveled, and he was wearing a t-shirt Maya had never seen before, one that looked expensive and definitely not his usual style. "Maya, we need to talk." He led her to the living room where Sofia was already seated, dressed in a crisp business suit that Maya recognized as designer. Her sister had never shown interest in business attire before, preferring flowing dresses and artistic accessories that matched her free-spirited personality. "Sit down," David said, gesturing to the couch across from where Sofia was perched in his favorite armchair. Maya remained standing. "Dad, what's going on? Why can't I get into the office?" David looked at Sofia, then back at Maya. "The company is going through some changes, big changes, and I've made some difficult decisions about the future direction of the business." "What kind of decisions?" Sofia leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Maya, Dad and I have been talking a lot lately about the company's position in the market, about sustainability and growth and long-term viability." Maya stared at her sister. Sofia had never used business terminology in casual conversation. She'd never shown interest in market positioning or growth strategies. She was an artist, a dreamer, who'd spent the last 3 years bouncing between yoga instructor certification, pottery classes, and a brief stint as a lifestyle blogger. "Since when do you care about market positioning?" Maya asked. "Since I started paying attention to what Dad's been dealing with," Sofia replied smoothly. "The stress he's been under, the late nights, the constant worry about cash flow and competition. I realized I needed to step up and help." Maya looked at her father. "Help how?" David shifted uncomfortably. "Sofia's been doing research, looking into modern business practices, new technologies, innovative approaches to construction management. She's brought some interesting ideas to the table." "What ideas?" Sofia stood up and walked to a briefcase Maya hadn't noticed before. She pulled out a folder thick with documents and spreadsheets. "I've been working with a business consultant, someone who specializes in family businesses and succession planning." The word succession hit Maya like a physical blow. "Succession planning?" "Dad's not getting any younger," Sofia said, "and the construction industry is changing rapidly. We need someone at the helm who understands modern marketing, digital innovation, customer relationship management systems, someone who can take the company into the future." Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. "I've been modernizing our systems for years. I implemented the new project management software. I created our digital marketing strategy. I've increased our client base by 40%. "And you've done great work," David said quickly. "But Sofia's brought some perspectives I hadn't considered, about efficiency, about streamlining operations, about positioning ourselves for the next generation of clients." Maya looked at the folder in Sofia's hands. "What's in there?" Sofia opened the folder and began pulling out charts and graphs. "Market analysis, competitive research, projected growth models. I've been working on this for months." "Months?" Maya's voice rose. "You've been planning this behind my back for months?" "It's not behind your back," Sofia said calmly. "It's strategic planning. Dad needed someone who could look at the big picture without being bogged down in day-to-day operations." Maya turned to her father. "Dad, I've been handling day-to-day operations because you asked me to. I've been managing projects, maintaining client relationships, overseeing crews, balancing budgets. I thought that's what you wanted." David wouldn't meet her eyes. "And you've done a good job. But maybe it's time for you to focus on what you do best: project management, site supervision, technical work. Let someone else handle the business strategy." "Someone else, meaning Sofia?" "Meaning someone with fresh eyes and new ideas." Maya looked at her sister, really looked at her. The designer suit, the professional demeanor, the business vocabulary, the thick folder of research. This wasn't the Sofia who'd spent last Christmas complaining about having to wear anything more formal than yoga pants to family dinner. "When did you become interested in construction?" Sofia smiled, and for a moment, Maya saw a flash of something that looked like triumph. "I've always been interested in the family business. I just expressed it differently. While you were learning to use power tools, I was developing people skills, creative thinking, strategic vision. Different approaches, same goal." Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. "What are you saying exactly?" David cleared his throat. "What we're saying is that the company needs new leadership, someone who can take us to the next level." "And that someone is Sofia?" "Sofia has proposed a comprehensive restructuring plan that would modernize our entire operation. New technology, expanded service offerings, strategic partnerships with other companies." Maya sat down heavily on the couch. "You're cutting me out." We're not cutting you out, Sofia said quickly. We're repositioning you. You'd still have a role in the company, just a different one, more focused on your strengths. My strengths being what, exactly? Hands-on work, technical expertise. You're great with the crews, great at solving problems on site. But running a business requires different skills. Maya stared at her sister. Skills that you suddenly have? Skills that I've been developing. The business consultant I've been working with specializes in family succession planning. He's helped dozens of companies transition leadership successfully. What's his name? Sofia hesitated for just a moment. Marcus Whitfield. He runs a consulting firm in the city. Maya made a mental note of the name. And he thinks you should run Dad's company? He thinks the company needs someone with vision, someone who understands modern business practices, someone who can build relationships with clients and partners. I've been building relationships with clients for years. Different kinds of relationships, Sofia said. You're great at managing projects, but I'm talking about strategic partnerships, long-term growth planning, brand development. Maya looked at her father again. Dad, is this really what you want? David's voice was quiet. I want what's best for the company, for the family. And you think Sofia running the business is what's best? I think Sofia has shown me possibilities I hadn't considered, ways to grow, ways to compete more effectively. Maya stood up. I need to see these plans, the market analysis, the growth projections, all of it. Sofia closed the folder. It's still in development. The consultant wants to present everything formally once we finalize the transition timeline. Transition timeline? David shifted in his chair. We're thinking about making the change official at the beginning of next year. That gives us time to work out all the details. Details like what happens to me. You'd have a position, Sofia said. A good position. Site supervisor, maybe operations manager. You'd still be involved in the day-to-day work, but not in the decision-making. Different people are suited for different roles, Sofia said. This way, everyone plays to their strengths. Maya walked to the window and looked out at the street where she'd learned to ride a bike, where she'd waited for the school bus, where she'd dreamed about someday running Chen Brothers Building Company. Everything looked the same, but the world had shifted completely. What about my shares in the company? The silence that followed was deafening. Maya, David said finally, we'll need to discuss the ownership structure as part of the transition. Maya turned around. I have 25% ownership. We agreed on that when I took over financial management. That was more of an informal arrangement, Sofia said. Nothing was ever made official legally. Maya's blood turned to ice. Nothing was made official? David looked uncomfortable. We talked about formalizing the ownership structure, but we never actually filed the paperwork. Maya stared at him. Dad, I've been treating this like my business for 5 years. I've made decisions, signed contracts, taken on debt obligations based on the assumption that I was a partner. And you are a partner, Sofia said, just not necessarily a legal partner, yet. Yet? The ownership structure is part of what we're reviewing, David said, as part of the overall restructuring. Maya realized she was holding her breath. Are you telling me that I might not have any ownership at all? We're telling you that everything is on the table, Sofia said. The consultant thinks the ownership structure should reflect the management structure. People who are responsible for strategic direction should have corresponding ownership stakes. Maya looked between her father and sister. You're stealing my company. We're not stealing anything, Sofia said firmly. We're making smart business decisions about the future. Smart business decisions that happen to benefit you and exclude me. Smart business decisions that put the right people in the right roles. Maya grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I need to think about this. Maya, David called after her, we're family. We'll work this out fairly. She turned back. Fairly? You changed the locks on the building I've been managing for years. You're talking about taking away my ownership stake, and you're handing control to someone who's never shown up to a single job site? How exactly is that fair? Sofia stood up. Maya, I know this is hard, but change is always difficult. In 6 months, you'll see that this was the right decision for everyone. Maya looked at her sister, really looked at her. The designer suit, the professional folder, the confident demeanor. 6 months ago, Sofia had been complaining about having to get up before 10 in the morning. Now she was talking about strategic business decisions and succession planning. 6 months, Maya repeated. You've really thought this through. We've tried to consider every angle, Sofia said. Maya nodded slowly. I can see that. As she drove away from her childhood home, Maya's mind raced through everything that had just happened. Her sister, who'd never expressed interest in construction or business, had somehow become an expert in strategic planning. Her father, who'd always praised Maya's dedication and business acumen, had apparently decided she wasn't suited for leadership. And the company she'd helped build, the company she'd assumed would be her legacy, was being taken away from her by people who claimed to know what was best for everyone. But Maya had learned something important during her years in construction. When someone tells you a foundation isn't solid, you don't just take their word for it. You get out your tools and you examine every beam, every joint, every support structure until you find the truth. Sofia and David might think they'd built their case carefully, but Maya knew how to look for weaknesses in any structure. And she had a feeling that when she started digging, she'd find more than a few cracks in their foundation. Her phone rang as she pulled into her apartment complex. Jenny, the office manager. Maya, honey, where are you? The Morrison clients are here for their 10 o'clock meeting. Maya closed her eyes. Jenny, didn't Dad tell you? I've been locked out. Locked out? What do you mean locked out? The locks were changed. I can't get in the building. There was a long pause. But you have the Morrison presentation. You've been working on it for weeks. I know. Can you handle it? Tell them there was a family emergency and we need to reschedule. Maya, what's going on? Your father hasn't said anything about changing locks or family emergencies. Apparently, there are a lot of things Dad hasn't mentioned to anyone. Another pause. Is everything okay? You sound upset. Maya looked up at her apartment building, the modest 2-bedroom place she'd chosen because it was close to job sites and because she'd been putting every spare dollar back into the business. Sofia lived in a downtown loft that cost 3 times Maya's rent. I don't know, Jenny. I honestly don't know. After hanging up, Maya sat in her car for a long time, thinking about the conversation with her father and sister. Something about the whole situation felt orchestrated, too smooth, too well planned. Sofia's sudden interest in business strategy, her professional appearance, her confident discussion of market analysis and growth projections, it was like watching someone play a role they'd rehearsed extensively. And that business consultant, Marcus Whitfield, Maya had never heard her father mention working with any consultants. David Chen was old school, the kind of man who trusted his instincts and his experience more than outside advice. The idea that he'd hire a consultant to help with succession planning without involving Maya, his presumed successor, seemed completely out of character. Maya pulled out her phone and did a quick search for Marcus Whitfield Consulting. Several results came up, but none of them seemed to specialize in family business succession planning. Most were generic business consultants or marketing specialists. She made a note to research more thoroughly later. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Sofia. I know this is a lot to process. Want to grab lunch later and talk it through? Maya stared at the message. 6 months ago, Sofia would have texted something like, OMG, drama, want to get tacos and wine? The formal, almost corporate tone was jarring. She texted back, need some time to think. Sofia's response came immediately. Of course, take all the time you need. We're all in this together. Maya set her phone aside and looked around her apartment. She decorated it simply, with a few pieces of furniture she'd built herself and some artwork Sofia had given her over the years. On her desk was a framed photo of her and her father at a job site, both wearing hard hats, both grinning at the camera. She'd been 23 then, just promoted to project manager, proud to be following in his footsteps. Now she wondered if those footsteps had been leading her toward a cliff all along. Her laptop was still open on the kitchen table where she'd left it the night before, spreadsheets full of project timelines and budget calculations displayed on the screen. Work she'd been doing for Chen Brothers Building Company, the company that had apparently decided she wasn't qualified to run. Maya closed the laptop and made herself a cup of coffee, trying to process everything that had happened.
In the span of 2 hours, she'd gone from being a partner in a successful family business to being an employee who might not even have job security. Her sister, who'd never shown interest in anything more challenging than choosing paint colors for her apartment, was suddenly positioned to take over a multi-million-dollar construction company. And her father, the man who taught her that integrity and hard work are the foundations of any successful business, was apparently willing to ignore both in favor of whatever Sofia and her mysterious consultant had promised him. Maya picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number for Tom Richardson, her father's lawyer and family friend.
If there really was no formal ownership agreement, she needed to know where she stood legally, and she needed to understand how Sofia had managed to position herself so advantageously so quickly. Something about this whole situation smelled like a carefully constructed con, and Maya had learned enough about construction to know that the most dangerous structural problems were the ones hidden beneath the surface. It was time to start digging. Tom Richardson's law office smelled like leather and old books, exactly the way Maya remembered from childhood visits when her father would bring her along for what he called boring grown-up meetings. Now those boring meetings suddenly seemed incredibly important. Tom looked exactly the same as he had 15 years ago, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of steady presence that made people trust him with their most important legal matters. He'd handled everything for the Chen family over the years: wills, business incorporation, real estate transactions, and countless other documents that Maya had never paid much attention to. "Maya, it's good to see you," Tom said, gesturing for her to sit in one of the burgundy leather chairs across from his mahogany desk. "Though I have to say, you look troubled." Maya had called that morning and managed to get an emergency appointment for late afternoon. She'd spent the hours in between researching Marcus Whitfield and finding very little concrete information about his consulting practice. His website was generic, his client testimonials were vague, and his business address led to a shared office space downtown. "Tom, I need to understand the ownership structure of Chen Brothers Building Company, specifically my ownership stake." Tom's eyebrows raised slightly. "Is there a problem with the company?" Maya explained everything that had happened, from being locked out of the office, to Sofia's sudden emergence as a business strategist, to their father's apparent willingness to restructure the entire company around her sister's recommendations. Tom listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When Maya finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "This is concerning," he said finally. "Let me pull the company files." He walked to a filing cabinet and retrieved a thick folder. Maya watched as he spread documents across his desk, scanning through incorporation papers, partnership agreements, and various amendments that had been made over the years. "Maya, when you and your father discussed your ownership stake, what exactly was agreed upon?" 25%. "We talked about it extensively when I took over financial management. He said he wanted me to have equity in the company I was helping to build." Tom nodded, continuing to review documents. "I see several discussions in my notes about formalizing your ownership position. Your father consulted with me about the best way to structure it, the tax implications, the legal requirements." Maya leaned forward. "So it was supposed to be official?" "It was supposed to be. We discussed it multiple times over the past 2 years. But looking at these files, I don't see any amended articles of incorporation, no partnership agreement modifications, no stock certificates issued in your name." Maya's stomach sank. "So legally, I own nothing?" Tom continued reviewing the papers. "According to these documents, David Chen owns 100% of Chen Brothers Building Company. Sofia is not mentioned anywhere in the corporate structure." "But she's talking about ownership stakes reflecting management responsibility." Tom looked up sharply. She said, "What?" Maya repeated Sofia's comments about ownership structure aligning with strategic direction responsibilities. Tom set down the papers. "Maya, I need to be very clear about something. If Sofia is discussing ownership restructuring, and if your father is considering making her a partner or transferring ownership to her, those are major corporate decisions that would require extensive legal documentation, which you would handle, which I would normally handle, yes. But your father hasn't consulted with me about any ownership changes. In fact, the last time we spoke was 3 months ago about a routine contract review." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "So if they're planning to change the ownership structure, they're either planning to do it without proper legal counsel or they're using a different lawyer."
Or they're not actually planning to change it at all, Tom said quietly. Maya, in my experience, when family members start talking about ownership changes without involving the family attorney, it often means they're either bluffing or they're planning something that might not be entirely legitimate. Maya thought about Sofia's confident demeanor, her professional appearance, her thick folder of business plans. Could someone fake ownership documentation? Tom's expression grew serious. It's possible, but it would be fraudulent, and ultimately, fake documents don't change legal reality. The corporation exists according to what's filed with the state, not according to what someone claims in a folder. What if Dad actually wants to change the ownership structure? Could he just transfer everything to Sofia? He could, but it would be a significant financial transaction with major tax implications. He'd need proper legal representation, and frankly, he'd be foolish to make such a decision without extensive consultation. David's not foolish. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing what Tom was telling her. So either Dad's being manipulated, or Sofia's running some kind of elaborate bluff. Or both, Tom said. Maya, I want you to do something for me. I want you to ask your father directly to schedule a meeting with me to discuss the ownership restructuring. If he's serious about making changes, he'll need legal counsel anyway. If he's not serious, or if someone is pressuring him to avoid proper legal channels, his reaction will tell us a lot. Maya nodded. And in the meantime, I'm going to do some research on this Marcus Whitfield consultant. If he's advising your family on business structure, I want to know his credentials and his track record. As Maya left Tom's office, she felt both relieved and more concerned than before. Relieved because she now understood that Sofia's confident claims about ownership restructuring might be nothing more than an elaborate performance. More concerned because if Sofia was willing to lie about something as serious as corporate ownership, what else was she lying about? Maya decided to drive by the Chen Brothers office building. It was after 6, so the office would be closed, but she wanted to see if there was any activity, any sign of what was happening inside the business she'd been locked out of. The parking lot was empty except for Sofia's red convertible. Maya parked across the street and watched as lights moved around inside the building. Sofia was there, apparently working late, which was unprecedented. In all the years Maya had known her sister, Sofia had never voluntarily worked past 5 o'clock on anything. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Jenny. Your father wants to see you tomorrow morning at 8. Says it's important. Another text followed immediately from Sofia. Dad wants to meet with you early tomorrow to discuss your new role in the company. It's going to be great. Maya stared at the messages. Her father wanted to discuss her new role, which implied that the restructuring was moving forward quickly. But Tom had made it clear that no legal steps had been taken to actually change the ownership structure, which meant tomorrow's meeting was likely another performance designed to convince Maya to accept a diminished position in her own family's company. She was about to drive home when she noticed another car pulling into the parking lot, a sleek black sedan that looked expensive and out of place in the industrial neighborhood where Chen Brothers was located. A man got out, well-dressed in a way that suggested he had money and wanted people to know it. He walked directly to the building entrance, and Sofia appeared immediately to let him in. Maya grabbed her phone and managed to take a few photos of the man before he disappeared inside. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she could make out his general build and clothing. If this was Marcus Whitfield, the mysterious business consultant, she wanted to be able to identify him later. The man stayed inside for about an hour. Maya waited, watching the lights move around the building, wondering what kind of consulting work required evening meetings in a construction company office. When he finally emerged, Maya was ready with her phone camera, but the angle was wrong and the lighting was poor. She got a few shots of him walking to his car, but nothing clear enough to be useful for identification. After he left, Sofia remained in the building for another 30 minutes before finally turning off the lights and leaving. Maya waited until her sister's car was completely out of sight before driving home. Back in her apartment, Maya uploaded the photos to her laptop and tried to enhance them, but the images were too grainy to be helpful.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
She made notes about the timing of the meeting, the type of car the man was driving, and his general appearance. If Tom's research on Marcus Whitfield turned up anything suspicious, these details might become important. Maya spent the rest of the evening going through her own files related to Chen Brothers. She had copies of contracts she'd negotiated, project reports she'd written, financial analyses she'd prepared.
If Sofia was claiming to be the strategic mind behind the company's success, Maya wanted to be able to document her own contributions clearly. As she worked, Maya found herself thinking about the changes she'd noticed in her sister over the past few months. Sofia had been less available for their usual sister lunches, claiming to be busy with various projects. She'd started dressing more professionally, though Maya had assumed it was related to some new artistic endeavor. And she'd been asking more questions about the family business, though her inquiries had seemed casual at the time. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through her text messages with Sofia from the past 6 months. The change in tone was subtle but noticeable. Sofia's messages had gradually become more formal, less peppered with emojis and casual language. Her questions about the business had become more specific and technical, and her complaints about their father's stress levels had become more frequent. It was as if Sofia had been laying groundwork for months, positioning herself as someone who understood business challenges, while simultaneously positioning Maya as someone who was adding to their father's burden rather than relieving it. Maya's phone rang, interrupting her analysis. David's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Dad." "Maya, I wanted to make sure you got the message about tomorrow morning." His voice sounded strained, tired in a way that Maya hadn't noticed before. "I got it. What do you want to discuss?" "Your future with the company. I know today was difficult, and I want to make sure you understand that we value your contributions." Maya chose her words carefully. "Dad, before we talk about my future, I need to understand what's happening with the ownership structure. I spoke with Tom Richardson today." There was a long pause. "You spoke with Tom?" "I needed to understand my legal position. He said you haven't consulted with him about any ownership changes." Another pause, longer this time. "Maya, these are complex decisions. There are multiple factors to consider." "What factors? And why haven't you involved Tom if you're making major corporate decisions?" "We're still in the preliminary stages. When things are more finalized, of course we'll involve Tom." Maya felt a surge of frustration. "Dad, you can't just decide to restructure ownership without proper legal documentation." Tom explained the requirements, the tax implications, all of it. "If you're serious about making Sofia a partner, you need to do it legally." "Who said anything about making Sofia a partner?" Maya paused. "She did. She talked about ownership stakes reflecting management responsibility." Silence on the other end of the line. "Dad?" "Maya, I think there may have been some miscommunication. Tomorrow we'll clear everything up." After hanging up, Maya sat staring at her phone. Her father's reaction to her mention of Tom Richardson had been telling. He'd sounded surprised, almost worried that she'd consulted with a lawyer. And his claim that Sofia hadn't discussed partnership was directly contradictory to everything Sofia had said that morning. Someone was lying, and Maya was beginning to suspect it might be her sister. She decided to do some additional research on Marcus Whitfield. A deeper internet search revealed that there were several business consultants with similar names, but none whose credentials matched what Sofia had described. She found a Marcus Whitfield who specialized in restaurant management consulting, another who focused on retail operations, and a third who worked primarily with technology startups. None of them mentioned family business succession planning as a specialty. Maya expanded her search to include variations of the name and different geographic areas. What she found was concerning. There were several news articles about business consultants who had defrauded family-owned companies, convincing owners to make hasty decisions based on fabricated market research and false credentials. The methods were surprisingly similar to what Maya had witnessed: sudden urgency, claims of specialized expertise, recommendations for dramatic organizational changes, and pressure to act quickly before opportunities were lost. One article in particular caught her attention. A family manufacturing company in Ohio had been convinced to completely restructure their operations based on the advice of a consultant who turned out to be working with one of the family members to manipulate the ownership structure for personal benefit. The consultant had provided impressive-looking market research and business plans, but when investigated, the data turned out to be largely fabricated. Maya screenshot the article and added it to her growing file of concerns about the situation. Her phone buzzed with another text from Sofia. "Really excited about tomorrow's meeting. I think you're going to love the new direction we're taking the company." Maya stared at the message. The enthusiasm seemed forced, and the use of "we're taking" suggested that Sofia already considered herself a decision maker in the company's future. Maya texted back, "Looking forward to hearing the details." Sofia's response was immediate. "The consultant's research is really impressive. Wait until you see the growth projections." Maya felt her pulse quicken. "Will Marcus be at the meeting?" A longer pause before Sofia replied, "He might join us later to present some of his findings." Maya smiled grimly. If the mysterious Marcus Whitfield was going to make an appearance, she wanted to be prepared. She spent the next hour researching everything she could find about business consulting fraud, familiarizing herself with common tactics and warning signs. The pattern was clear. Fraudulent consultants typically worked with an inside accomplice, someone within the family or organization who could provide credibility and access. They presented impressive-looking documentation and research, but when examined closely, the information was often generic, outdated, or simply fabricated. They created artificial urgency, claiming that opportunities would be lost if decisions weren't made quickly. And they almost always recommended organizational changes that benefited their accomplice at the expense of other family members. Maya was beginning to suspect that Sofia wasn't just an accomplice in whatever Marcus Whitfield was planning. She was beginning to think Sofia might be the mastermind, and Marcus Whitfield might not even exist as described. The next morning, Maya arrived at Chen Brothers 15 minutes early. Jenny was already there, looking confused and apologetic. "Maya, honey, I'm so sorry about the lock situation. Your father didn't explain anything to me." "It's not your fault, Jenny. Did Dad say anything about what the meeting was going to cover?" Jenny shook her head. "Just that it was important family business." "But Maya, I have to tell you, there have been some strange things happening around here lately." Maya's attention sharpened. "What kind of strange things?" "Well, Sofia's been coming in a lot, working in your father's office. She's had meetings with people I don't recognize, and she's been asking me questions about client contracts, project timelines, financial records, things she's never shown interest in before." "What kind of people has she been meeting with?" "Mostly one man, well-dressed, drives a fancy car. Sofia introduced him as a business consultant, but something about him seemed off." Maya felt her suspicions crystallizing. "Off how?" Jenny lowered her voice. "He asked me questions about company procedures, but they were weird questions, like he was trying to learn basic things about how construction companies operate."
Not the kind of questions you'd expect from an experienced consultant. Did you catch his name? Sofia called him Marcus, but when he answered his phone, he said a different name. I couldn't hear it clearly, but it definitely wasn't Marcus. Maya felt a chill run through her. "Jenny, has my father been involved in these meetings?" "Sometimes, but mostly it's just Sofia and this Marcus person. And Maya, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I've seen Sofia copying files from your office. Client lists, project records, financial documents. She said your father asked her to organize everything, but it seemed strange." Before Maya could respond, Sofia appeared in the reception area. She was wearing another expensive-looking business suit and carrying the same professional folder from the day before. "Maya, perfect timing. Dad's waiting for us in the conference room." Maya followed Sofia down the hallway, noting that her sister's office door was open and that the space had been completely transformed. Where Sofia had previously used the room for storage, it was now set up as a fully functional office with new furniture, multiple monitors, and walls covered with charts and graphs. "You've been busy," Maya observed. Sofia smiled. "Just trying to get organized. Dad thought it would be good for me to have a proper workspace while we're planning the transition." In the conference room, David was seated at the head of the table, with documents spread out in front of him. He looked tired and somehow smaller than Maya remembered. "Maya, sit down. We have a lot to discuss." Maya chose a seat across from Sofia, wanting to be able to watch her sister's reactions to whatever was about to be presented. "First," David began, "I want to apologize for the confusion yesterday. The security changes were necessary, but I should have communicated better." "Necessary for what?" Sofia leaned forward. "Dad's been concerned about sensitive information security. With the company growing and taking on larger projects, we need better protocols." Maya looked at her father.
Since when are we taking on larger projects? Last I checked, we were maintaining our current client base and focusing on steady growth. David shifted uncomfortably. That's part of what we need to discuss. Sofia's consultant has identified some significant growth opportunities. Maya decided to test what she'd learned from Jenny. This consultant, Marcus Whitfield, I'd like to meet him. Sofia and David exchanged glances. He's very busy, Sofia said, but he might be able to join us later. What firm does he work for? Another exchange of glances. David cleared his throat. He's an independent consultant, very specialized in family business succession. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her notes. I tried to research his background yesterday, but I couldn't find much information about his credentials or his track record with family businesses. Sofia's smile seemed forced. He's very exclusive. Most of his work is confidential, so he doesn't advertise extensively. But surely he has references, other family businesses he's helped successfully transition? Of course he does, Sofia said quickly. But due to confidentiality agreements, he can't share client information without permission. Maya nodded as if this made perfect sense, while mentally noting that Sofia was providing exactly the kind of evasive answers that the fraud articles had warned about. Well, Maya said, I'm looking forward to meeting him and reviewing his recommendations. In the meantime, can you show me the market research and growth projections you mentioned? Sofia opened her folder and began pulling out documents. Maya recognized some of the charts and graphs immediately. They were modified versions of industry reports that Maya herself had compiled over the past year, with the data manipulated to support different conclusions. This market analysis shows that construction companies our size need to expand rapidly or risk being pushed out by larger competitors, Sofia explained, pointing to a graph that Maya knew had been altered. Maya studied the document. This data looks familiar. Where did it come from? Marcus compiled it from multiple industry sources, Sofia said smoothly. Maya pulled out her own phone and opened a photo of the original report she'd prepared 6 months earlier. The graph structures were identical, but the numbers had been changed and the conclusions had been rewritten. Sofia, Maya said quietly, this is my research. This is a report I prepared for Dad in March. Sofia's face went pale for just a moment before she recovered. Well, of course, Marcus would use existing company research as a starting point. That's good consulting practice. But the numbers have been changed. The conclusions are completely different from what the actual data supported. David leaned forward to look at the documents. Maya showed him her original report on her phone, then pointed to the corresponding sections in Sofia's folder. Dad, look at the revenue projections. In my original analysis, the data suggested steady, sustainable growth over 5 years. In this version, the same data has been manipulated to suggest that we need rapid expansion or we'll lose market share. David studied both documents, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Sofia, can you explain these discrepancies? Sofia's composure was starting to crack. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Maybe Marcus updated the data with more recent information. Maya shook her head. The source dates are the same. The only thing that's changed is the interpretation, and it's been changed to support a predetermined conclusion about the need for restructuring. David set down the papers and looked at Sofia. I need to understand what's going on here. These discrepancies are significant. Sofia stood up abruptly. I think there's been some confusion. Let me call Marcus and have him explain the methodology. She pulled out her phone and walked to the corner of the room. Maya watched as Sofia dialed a number and waited. After a moment, she spoke quietly into the phone, but Maya could see her growing agitation. He's not answering, she announced. He must be in another meeting. Maya decided to push further. Sofia, Jenny mentioned that you've been copying files from my office. Client lists, project records, financial documents. Can you explain why? Sofia's face flushed. Dad asked me to help organize company records as part of the transition planning. Maya turned to her father.
Dad, did you ask Sofia to copy files from my office? David looked confused. I asked her to help review company procedures, but I didn't specifically tell her to copy files from your office.
So she took it upon herself to access confidential client information and financial records? Sophia's voice rose. I was trying to help. I was trying to understand the business so I could contribute meaningfully to the planning process. Maya stood up. Sophia, I think you need to explain exactly what kind of help you've been providing, and I think you need to explain who this Marcus Whitfield person really is. Sophia looked trapped. She glanced at David, then back at Maya, then toward the door as if considering escape. I don't know what you're implying, she said finally. Maya pulled out her phone and showed Sophia the news article about consulting fraud. I'm implying that you've been running a con game, using fabricated research and a fake consultant to manipulate Dad into restructuring the company in your favor. The silence in the room was deafening. David looked back and forth between his daughters, clearly trying to process what Maya was suggesting. Sophia's carefully constructed professional demeanor finally cracked completely. You don't understand anything, she snapped. You think you're so smart, so responsible, so perfect, but you don't see what's really happening. Then explain it to me, Maya said calmly. Sophia looked at David, her eyes filling with tears, but they looked different from the tears Maya remembered from childhood. These looked calculated, strategic. Dad, you know I love this family. You know I want what's best for everyone. Maya's trying to turn you against me because she's afraid of losing control. Maya felt a familiar pattern emerging, the same emotional manipulation Sophia had used their entire lives. But this time, Maya wasn't going to back down. Sophia, Maya said, I want you to call Marcus Whitfield right now and ask him to come to this meeting. If he's real, if his research is legitimate, if his recommendations are based on actual analysis, then he should be able to defend his work in person. Sophia's face went through a series of expressions: fear, anger, desperation, and finally, something that looked like defeat. Fine, she said, grabbing her phone. I'll call him right now. Maya and David watched as Sophia dialed a number and waited. After a moment, she spoke into the phone. Marcus, it's Sophia. I need you to come to the Chen Brothers office immediately. There are some questions about your research that need to be addressed. She listened for a moment, then her face changed completely. She ended the call and looked at Maya with something that might have been respect. He'll be here in 20 minutes, she said quietly. Maya nodded. Good, I'm looking forward to meeting him. But as Sophia sat back down, Maya noticed something interesting. Her sister's hands were shaking, and she kept glancing toward the door as if she were planning an escape route. 20 minutes would tell them everything they needed to know about Marcus Whitfield and Sophia's elaborate plan to steal the family business. Maya had a feeling that when those 20 minutes were up, the truth was going to be very different from anything Sophia had claimed. 20 minutes stretched into 30, then 40. Sophia kept checking her phone, making increasingly frantic calls to a number that apparently wasn't answering. David sat in uncomfortable silence, occasionally looking at the documents spread across the conference table as if seeing them clearly for the first time. Maya waited patiently, watching her sister's facade crumble piece by piece. He must be stuck in traffic, Sophia said for the third time, her voice losing its professional confidence with each repetition. Maya glanced at her watch. It's been 45 minutes, Sophia. Maybe you should try a different number. This is his only number. He's very private about his contact information. David finally spoke up. Sophia, I'm starting to have concerns about this consultant. If he's advising us on major business decisions, he should be available when we need him. Sophia's face was flushed now, and Maya could see perspiration beading on her forehead despite the office's air conditioning. Maybe we should reschedule, give him time to prepare his presentation properly. Or, Maya said quietly, we should acknowledge that Marcus Whitfield doesn't exist. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sophia's eyes darted between Maya and their father, and Maya could practically see her calculating different escape strategies. That's ridiculous, Sophia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Of course he exists. I've been working with him for months. Maya pulled out her laptop and connected it to the conference room's presentation screen. Then you won't mind if I show Dad what I found when I researched Marcus Whitfield's credentials. Sophia moved quickly toward the laptop. You don't understand the confidentiality requirements of his work.
Maya blocked her sister's access to the computer. Then explain them to us. Explain why a legitimate business consultant would have no online presence, no verifiable client references, and no professional credentials that can be independently confirmed. David leaned forward in his chair. Maya, show me what you found. Maya opened her research files and displayed them on the screen. The searches for Marcus Whitfield Consulting showed generic results, shared office spaces, and several news articles about consulting fraud. She pulled up the article about the Ohio manufacturing company that had been defrauded using similar tactics. Dad, look at this case. A family business convinced to restructure based on fake market research and fabricated growth projections. The consultant worked with an inside family member to manipulate ownership structure for personal gain. David read silently, his expression growing increasingly serious. Maya watched Sofia from the corner of her eye and saw her sister's hands clenched into fists. The methods are identical to what we've experienced, Maya continued. Sudden urgency about market conditions, claims of specialized expertise that can't be verified, pressure to make major decisions quickly, and recommendations that benefit one family member at the expense of others. Sofia stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to these accusations. Dad, Maya's trying to sabotage legitimate business planning because she's threatened by change. Maya turned to face her sister directly. Then call him again, right now, while we're all here. Put him on speakerphone so Dad can hear his expertise directly. Sofia's phone trembled in her hands as she dialed. Maya and David waited as the call connected, went to voicemail, and disconnected. His voicemail box is full, Sofia announced. Maya had heard enough. She walked to Sofia's professional folder and opened it to examine the contents more closely. Along with the manipulated research reports, she found copies of client contracts, financial statements, and proprietary information that Sofia had no business accessing. Sofia, these are confidential company documents. Some of these contain client information that could be legally problematic if misused. David stood up and looked over Maya's shoulder at the folder contents. His face went pale as he recognized sensitive financial data and client lists that should have been secured. Sofia, he said quietly, why do you have copies of these documents? Sofia's composure finally shattered completely. Because I needed to understand the business. Because you never included me in anything.
Because Maya always got everything handed to her while I had to watch from the sidelines. The raw emotion in Sofia's voice was real, but Maya recognized the pattern. Sofia always moved from manipulation to victimization when her schemes were exposed. So you decided to steal company information and fabricate a consultant to manipulate Dad into giving you control of the business? I didn't steal anything. This is family information. I'm part of this family too. Maya turned to her father. Dad, I need you to understand something. Sofia has been planning this for months. The locked doors, the ownership discussions, the mysterious consultant, all of it was designed to push me out and position her to take over the company. David sank back into his chair, looking older than Maya had ever seen him. Sofia, is this true? Sofia's eyes filled with tears, but Maya noticed they seemed less authentic than her usual performances. I was trying to help. I was trying to save the company from stagnation. By lying about market research? By fabricating a consultant? By copying confidential files? Sofia turned away from both of them, facing the window that overlooked the parking lot. When she spoke again, her voice was different, flatter, without the emotional manipulation Maya was accustomed to. Do you want to know the truth? The real truth? Maya and David waited. Sofia turned back around, and the professional mask was completely gone. What remained was someone Maya barely recognized, someone harder and more calculating than she'd ever imagined her sister could be. The truth is that I'm tired of watching you get everything while I get nothing. Tired of being the artistic, flighty sister while you're the responsible, capable one. Tired of Dad praising your work ethic while treating me like a child who can't handle real responsibility. David started to speak, but Sofia held up her hand. I'm not finished. The truth is that I spent 6 months learning everything I could about this business, about construction, about management, about family succession planning.
Not because some fake consultant taught me, but because I taught myself. Because I wanted to prove that I could be just as valuable as Maya. Maya felt a flicker of something that might have been respect, quickly followed by renewed anger. So you decided to prove it by trying to steal the company? I decided to prove it by showing Dad that there were other options, other perspectives, other ways to run the business. David's voice was quiet when he spoke. Sofia, even if your motivations were understandable, your methods were completely inappropriate. You copied confidential information, you fabricated credentials for a non-existent consultant, and you tried to manipulate me into making major corporate decisions based on false information. Sofia sat back down, and for the first time in the entire conversation, she looked genuinely remorseful rather than strategically emotional. I know it was wrong, but I felt like it was the only way anyone would take me seriously. Maya studied her sister's face, trying to determine if this new vulnerability was real or just another performance. Sofia, if you really wanted to be involved in the business, why didn't you just ask? Why didn't you express interest in learning the industry legitimately? Sofia laughed, but it sounded bitter rather than amused. When? When would I have asked? At Sunday dinners where you and Dad discussed projects while I sat there knowing nothing about construction? During the day when you were both at job sites and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life? David looked stricken. Sofia, if you'd expressed interest, we would have found ways to include you. Would you, really? Or would you have given me some administrative task while continuing to groom Maya as your successor? Maya realized that her sister's resentment ran much deeper than she'd understood, but it didn't excuse the elaborate deception. Sofia, regardless of how excluded you felt, what you did was fraud. You falsified business documents, you lied about professional credentials, and you tried to manipulate Dad into restructuring the company under false pretenses. Sofia nodded slowly. You're right, it was fraud. And now I suppose you're going to call the police or sue me or destroy my life in some other way. Maya looked at her father, then back at her sister. The anger she'd felt over the past 2 days was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Disappointment, perhaps, or sadness about the family dynamic that had led to this situation. What I'm going to do, Maya said carefully, is insist on some changes. Real changes, not the manipulative kind you tried to orchestrate. Sofia looked up with what might have been hope. First, you're going to return every document you copied from company files. All of it. And you're going to delete any digital copies you made. Sofia nodded. Second, you're going to acknowledge in writing that Marcus Whitfield was a fabrication and that all the research and recommendations attributed to him came from manipulated company data. Another nod. Third, if you really want to be involved in this business, you're going to start at the bottom and learn it properly. No shortcuts, no special treatment, no manipulation. You'll work on job sites, you'll learn the trade, you'll understand what construction actually involves before you try to manage it. Sofia's eyes widened. You're offering me a job? David spoke up. That depends on whether you're genuinely interested in the work or just interested in the ownership. Sofia was quiet for a long moment, apparently considering the offer. What about the ownership structure? What about your partnership with Maya? Maya looked at her father. Dad, I think it's time we had the ownership conversation properly, with Tom Richardson, with proper legal documentation, with full transparency about everyone's roles and responsibilities. David nodded. Agreed. And Sofia, if you prove yourself capable and committed over time, we can discuss your potential role in company ownership. But it would be based on actual contribution and demonstrated competence, not manipulation or family politics. Sofia wiped her eyes, and this time the tears looked genuine. I don't know if I can do the physical work. I've never been good at hands-on labor. Maya almost smiled. Sofia, construction isn't just physical work. There's project planning, client relations, materials management, scheduling, quality control, safety compliance. Plenty of opportunities for someone with good organizational skills and attention to detail. But I'd have to start as an employee, not as a partner or manager. Everyone starts as an employee, David said firmly. Maya worked her way up over years. She learned every aspect of the business before taking on management responsibilities. If you want to be part of this company, you'll do the same. Sofia looked around the conference room, at the documents scattered across the table, at the presentation screen still displaying Maya's research about consulting fraud.
What happens if I say no? What happens if I don't want to work in construction? Maya had been wondering the same thing. Then you figure out what you do want to do, and you do it honestly. But you don't get to inherit a business you never contributed to, and you don't get to manipulate family relationships to get what you want. David stood up and began gathering the documents. Sofia, I want you to take some time to think about what you really want, not what you think you deserve, not what you think is fair compared to Maya's situation, but what you actually want to do with your life. Sofia remained seated while Maya and David organized the papers. When she spoke again, her voice was small and uncertain, completely different from either the professional confidence or emotional manipulation she'd displayed earlier. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I let resentment turn me into someone I don't recognize. Maya looked at her sister and saw something she hadn't expected: genuine vulnerability. Not the calculated kind Sofia used to get her way, but real uncertainty and regret. Sofia, we're family. We can work through this, but it has to be based on honesty going forward. Sofia nodded and finally stood up. I need to go home and think about everything. As Sofia gathered her things, Maya noticed that her sister left behind the professional folder and all the fabricated research. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. After Sofia left, Maya and David sat in the conference room surrounded by the evidence of the elaborate deception. The silence stretched between them, both processing what had just been revealed. Dad, I have to ask, did you really believe Sofia had suddenly developed business expertise, or were you hoping she could find a way to contribute to the company? David rubbed his temples. Honestly, a little of both. I felt guilty about not including Sofia in the business, about focusing so much attention on your development while she seemed to drift from one interest to another. When she started showing knowledge about construction and business strategy, I wanted to believe it was real. Maya understood. Family dynamics were complicated, and guilt could make people vulnerable to manipulation. What do we do now? David gathered the last of the papers. Now we clean up this mess. We secure any information Sofia might have compromised, we document what happened, and we make sure all our actual business decisions are based on accurate data and proper legal procedures. Maya nodded. And Tom Richardson? We'll meet with Tom next week to properly formalize your ownership stake. No more informal arrangements, no more assumptions. Everything documented legally. As they prepared to leave the conference room, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled. What is it? David asked. Maya showed him the message. It was from a potential client, a large commercial developer, who wanted to schedule a meeting about a significant project opportunity. Ironically, Maya said, this is exactly the kind of growth opportunity Sofia was claiming we needed a consultant to identify. But it came through our existing reputation and client relationships, not through manipulated market research. David chuckled, the first genuine laugh Maya had heard from him in days. Maybe we should hire Sofia as our fraud prevention consultant. She certainly knows all the warning signs now. Maya smiled, feeling lighter than she had since the whole ordeal began. Let's see if she can learn to spot legitimate opportunities first. A week later, Maya was reviewing project timelines in her office when Jenny knocked on the door. Maya, there's someone here to see you. Says his name is Marcus Whitfield. Maya looked up sharply. Marcus Whitfield? That's what he said. Should I tell him you're not available? Maya's mind raced through possibilities. Either Sofia was attempting another deception, or there actually was a Marcus Whitfield and Sofia had somehow gotten involved with him. Send him in, but stay close to the office, and call Tom Richardson to let him know we might need legal consultation. The man who entered Maya's office was well-dressed and professionally confident, matching the general description of the person she'd seen meeting with Sofia.
but there was something immediately different about his demeanor that suggested he wasn't part of whatever Sofia had been planning. Miss Chen, thank you for seeing me. I'm Marcus Whitfield, and I believe your sister may have been using my name without permission. Maya gestured for him to sit down. Explain. Marcus opened a briefcase and pulled out a business card and several documents. I'm a legitimate business consultant, specializing in family succession planning. About 3 months ago, a woman claiming to be Sofia Chen contacted my office inquiring about my services for her family's construction company. Maya examined his business card. Unlike her internet searches, his credentials appeared genuine and verifiable. I sent her some preliminary information about our consultation process, including examples of the kind of research and analysis we provide for family businesses. She scheduled an initial consultation but never showed up for the appointment. Maya felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. So she got enough information from you to create a convincing performance. It appears so. Yesterday, I received a very angry voicemail from someone demanding to know why I hadn't shown up for a meeting at Chen Brothers Building Company. The caller claimed I had been providing consulting services for months, which was completely false. Marcus pulled out a printed email. This morning, I received this email from Sofia Chen apologizing for the confusion and admitting that she had been impersonating my consultation work. She asked me to come here and clear up any misunderstanding. Maya read the email, recognizing Sofia's writing style, but noting the formal, apologetic tone. It seemed her sister was attempting to clean up the damage she'd caused. Mr. Whitfield, I apologize for any problems this situation may have caused for your business. Actually, Miss Chen, I'm here because the situation intrigued me. Sofia's email included some details about your family's business, and from what I can see, you might actually benefit from legitimate succession planning consultation. Maya leaned back in her chair. We're working with our family attorney on formalizing ownership structure, but I'd be interested to hear your perspective. Marcus spent the next hour asking thoughtful questions about the company's history, current operations, and long-term goals. Unlike Sofia's fabricated consultation, his inquiries were specific, knowledgeable, and focused on practical implementation rather than dramatic restructuring. Ms. Chen, based on what you've told me, your company is actually in a very strong position. You don't need radical changes or urgent restructuring. What you need is clear documentation of roles and responsibilities, formal succession planning that protects both the business and family relationships, and possibly some strategic planning for sustainable growth. Maya found herself genuinely interested in his recommendations. What would that look like practically? Marcus outlined a consultation process that was methodical, transparent, and designed to strengthen rather than disrupt existing successful operations. It was everything Sofia's fabricated consultation had pretended to be. I'd be interested in working with you, Maya said, but I want full transparency with my father and sister about the process, and everything needs to be coordinated with our family attorney.
Absolutely. That's the only way family business consultation works effectively. As Marcus prepared to leave, he handed Maya another business card. Miss Chen, I have to say, your sister's impersonation was quite sophisticated. She clearly spent considerable time studying legitimate consultation practices. If she applied that same intelligence and effort to learning your actual business, she might have significant potential. Maya smiled. That's exactly what we're hoping to find out. After Marcus left, Maya called her father to update him on the unexpected development. David was amazed by the coincidence, but pleased that they might have found a legitimate consultant to help with proper succession planning. What about Sofia? He asked. She's been working on job sites for the past week. Jenny says she's been showing up on time, asking good questions, and not complaining about the work. It might actually be the first time she's ever stuck with something challenging. David chuckled. Maybe getting caught in her deception was exactly what she needed. Maya looked out her office window toward the construction site where Sofia was currently learning to read blueprints under the supervision of their most experienced foreman. Her sister was wearing work boots and a hard hat, covered in dust, looking more engaged than Maya had seen her in years. Dad, I think this whole situation might end up being the best thing that happened to our family in a long time. 2 months later, Maya was in the conference room with David, Sofia, Tom Richardson, and Marcus Whitfield, reviewing the formal succession planning documents that would secure the future of Chen Brothers Building Company. Sofia had proven herself capable and committed, earning respect from the construction crews and demonstrating genuine interest in learning the business properly. The ownership structure they developed was fair and based on actual contribution rather than family politics or manipulation. Maya retained primary ownership and operational control, David maintained advisory involvement, and Sofia had a path to earning ownership stakes based on performance and commitment over time. "I have to admit," Sofia said, looking at the documents, "this is so much better than what I was trying to manipulate you into. The real planning process actually makes sense." Maya smiled at her sister. "Plus, you understand the business now. You know what you're potentially inheriting, what the challenges are, what the opportunities look like." Sofia nodded. "And I understand why you were frustrated with my fake consultation. Now that I know what legitimate business analysis looks like, I can see how obviously fabricated my version was." Marcus gathered his papers. "This has been one of the most interesting family succession cases I've worked on. Usually, family conflicts arise from communication problems or unclear expectations. In your case, the conflict actually led to better communication and clearer expectations." David looked around the table at his daughters and smiled. "Sometimes the best solutions come from the most complicated problems." As everyone prepared to leave, Sofia approached Maya privately. "Maya, I know I can't undo the deception, but I want you to know that working on the job sites has taught me something important. I learned that I actually like construction work, not because I want to take over your company, but because I enjoy solving problems and building things that last." Maya felt a warmth toward her sister that had been absent for years. "Sofia, there's room in this company for both of us to build something that lasts, but it has to be built on truth." Sofia nodded. "Truth and a lot of hard work." Maya laughed. "Welcome to the construction business." 6 months after Sofia's elaborate deception was exposed, Maya was driving through the city when she noticed a new building under construction, scaffolding and cranes reaching toward the sky. The project sign at the entrance read Chen Brothers Building Company in familiar letters, but beneath it was a subtitle that Maya smiled, "A Family Tradition of Excellence." She pulled over and called Sofia, who answered immediately. "Maya, perfect timing. I just got the structural engineer's approval on the foundation work. We're ahead of schedule and under budget." Maya could hear the genuine excitement in her sister's voice, the satisfaction of someone who had found work they truly enjoyed rather than work they felt entitled to. "How's the crew treating you?" "Like family, which is to say, they give me a hard time, but they've got my back when it matters." Maya smiled. Sofia had learned what Maya had always known. Earning respect in the construction business meant proving yourself through work, not through manipulation or entitlement. "Dad's going to be proud when he sees the progress." "He already is. He stopped by this morning and spent an hour talking with the crew about the project." "Maya, I think this is the first time in my life that I've done something he's proud of without feeling like I had to compete with you." Maya felt a tightness in her throat. The family dynamic that had driven Sofia to deception had finally been healed through honest work and clear expectations. "Sofia, I'm proud of you too. What you did was wrong, but how you've handled the consequences has been remarkable." "I learned from the best," Sofia replied. "You could have destroyed me when you exposed the fraud. Instead, you gave me a chance to become someone better." As Maya ended the call and continued driving, she reflected on how dramatically their family had changed. The deception that could have destroyed them had instead forced them to address problems that had been festering for years. Sofia's attempt to steal the company had ultimately led to a stronger, more honest, and more inclusive family business. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Whitfield. "Saw the article about Chen Brothers in the industry magazine. Congratulations on the successful project completion and the innovative family succession model. You're going to be a case study I reference for years." Maya smiled, remembering Sofia's fabricated version of Marcus and comparing it to the genuine expertise that had helped their family navigate the aftermath of the deception. The contrast between fake and real expertise had become a valuable lesson for all of them. As she pulled into the parking lot of Chen Brothers Building Company, Maya noticed that the locks had been changed again. But this time, it wasn't to keep her out. This time, it was part of the security improvements they'd implemented after Sofia's unauthorized access to confidential files. The difference was that now everyone who belonged there had keys, and everyone understood their role in protecting what they'd built together.
Maya used her key to enter the building, walking past Sofia's office where her sister was reviewing blueprints for their next project. David's office, where her father was transitioning into an advisory role with dignity and continued involvement. Jenny's desk, where their loyal office manager continued to keep everything organized while now knowing to watch for signs of internal fraud. In her own office, Maya looked at the wall where she'd hung the formal ownership documents that Tom Richardson had prepared. Legal, transparent, fair, and based on actual contribution rather than family politics or elaborate deceptions. Everything Sofia's fake consultation had pretended to offer, but real this time. Maya opened her laptop and began reviewing project proposals for the coming year. Chen Brothers Building Company was thriving, with a waiting list of clients and a reputation for quality work and ethical business practices. The attempted fraud had been exposed, the family relationships had been healed, and everyone involved had learned valuable lessons about truth, work, and earning what you receive. As she worked, Maya could hear Sofia on the phone with a client, discussing project timelines with confidence and expertise that had been earned through months of hands-on learning. The voice was familiar, but the competence was new, genuine, and built on a foundation of real knowledge rather than elaborate performance. Maya smiled and returned to her work, satisfied that justice had been served, not through punishment or revenge, but through the opportunity for everyone to become better versions of themselves. Sofia's attempt to steal the company had failed, but her opportunity to earn a legitimate place in it had succeeded beyond what any of them had imagined possible. The construction business had taught them all that the strongest structures are built on solid foundations, with honest materials, by people who understand their craft. The same principles Maya had learned applied to family businesses and family relationships. Sometimes the best way to build something that lasts is to tear down what's fake and start over with what's real. Maya looked out her office window at the city skyline, filled with buildings that would stand for decades because they'd been constructed properly by people who knew their work. Chen Brothers Building Company would be part of that skyline, but more importantly, it would be part of a family legacy built on truth rather than deception, on earned respect rather than manipulated outcomes, and on the understanding that the most valuable things in life are the ones you build yourself, honestly, one day at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.